Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is the first in a series about sex. I'm going to explore this issue or this subject matter from different angles. And the first of these videos is going to deal with the houses that I connect with sex and the signs that I think are the most uh what kind of word can I use? Randy, horny, and also if I can think of any aspects that speak on this, and I will talk about that as well. In future videos, I'm going to delve into sexual abuse and negative ideas or negative experiences, and therefore concepts about sex and also sex work. I might just make that one video because those two things definitely go together. But this one, I felt like it was kind of like a different aspect of it, and I just want to talk about it. And it's interesting too because I just went online to see what was said about the houses that are connected to sex, and I got some weird answers, and I think, or links, and it turned out that they were Vedic astrology. And if any of you have also looked into your Vedic chart or whatever, just reading about astrology from that perspective, you know that some of the interpretations of the houses are different. They might have, some things that are the same, but sometimes they can be symbolic of different things. And definitely in this case, I found some things that do not correspond to Western astrology. So I didn't even bother reading it. But anyway, I'm just doing this on my own. And because I welcome any of you, because there are some people who are very knowledgeable about astrology and have taught me a thing or two, and that's wonderful. So the two main houses that I associate with sex are the fifth and eighth houses. The fifth house in astrology is ruled by Leo, and it actually is a house of conceiving children. So from that angle, it makes a lot of sense. But it's also the house of recreational sex. What is recreational sex anyway? You know, is sex a hobby for some people? But really, what we're talking about is sex for the sake of having sex. The fifth house is a house of pleasure, so it makes sense from that angle. It's also the house of dating. So dating is not commitment. And, some people might say that they're dating around when really they're sleeping around. They might have zero interest in commitment, but they want to look respectable. So they say they're dating when really they're having multiple sex partners. And this is where a lot of people, because of their own attitude towards sex, and it can go either way. Either they're very pro-sex, there's more than two ways. Some people are very pro-sex, some people are very anti-sex, and some people are neutral. And sometimes that neutrality means indifference. Sometimes maybe it's that they're very balanced and they think it has a place in life, but they don't place it front and center. So when people attach morality to sex, that can really like raise the ire of some people, that they're just like, how dare people shame others for something that's a biological desire or maybe some people are anti-religious and they point out how religion has shamed people unnecessarily. And then, the way that I approach it, as a Sagittarian who's supposed to be about morality, Sagittarius, Jupiter, about morality. I don't really like the word morality because I think it's very subjective, but when you look at what sex can produce, not 100% of the time though, but if it can bring new life into this world, which the fifth house can be about conceiving children, then it does take on greater importance. It's not, it can involve a third party, this new soul that can come through. So I believe it should be given more weight than it is. But even if you're talking about same sex, or people that are not engaging in any sex acts that could possibly make them reproduce, there still is the issue of intimacy. And this is what the eighth house, when I talk about that, I'm going to be really delving into that, because the fifth house is approaching sex as something that gives them pleasure, or maybe because the fifth house can be hobbies, pastimes, amusements, something to pass the time, something to distract themselves with, something they do on their off hours. And to me, sometimes there is a mindless quality. And when a person is becoming physically intimate with somebody else, even if it's not leading to some great love affair, to me, there is still this connection with somebody. You don't necessarily want to get that close to somebody. You might, fool yourself into thinking, oh, well, we're not emotionally involved, but there could be energetic threads that bind you, even when you think that you weren't doing anything beyond, the sexual act. So in other words, it could connect you to somebody you don't really want to be connected to. So, I never thought about, when I was talking about sex, the sexual houses, that I could talk about some of the planets here and how they either enhance this or they indicate that there is some blockage there. And I think I'll do that. So with the fifth house, if somebody has Saturn in the fifth house, they may take love very seriously. And so the fifth house can be love. We say love and romance, but love meaning the feelings themselves, not necessarily, you can love somebody and not be married to them or committed to them. They might not be committed to you and you still love them more than anything in this world. So love itself, you would take love seriously. And therefore, and also when somebody has Saturn in the fifth house, everything else is very, you may be so serious that it's hard for you to let your hair down, to go to parties and do anything on your off hours that is just for the sake of doing it. Everything that is like a hobby, you might even think, how can I make money off of this? If you're a talented artist, the fifth house can be creativity. How can I make money off of this? If you are meeting someone and dating them, you might be thinking of, okay, is this marriage material? You would probably never think of dating someone just for the sake of it, knowing that there's no future for the two of you, but you just want to go out and have fun with this person. If somebody has Jupiter in the fifth house, you may have a lot of flings. And when I say flings, yes, I do think that could be somebody who is, um, I don't really like the word promiscuous, but somebody who is having multiple sex partners. But, it could simply be that you're very romantic and you just love having those romances. Doesn't have to be connected to sex, but I'm just saying it could be. Mars, definitely, because Mars, it can be about sex drive. So in the fifth house, the person may actively be pursuing that kind of encounter. And to me, Mars doesn't have a lot of staying power necessarily. So the person may not be necessarily interested in maintaining that connection with that person. They might just be going from one to the other. And if you are female with Mars in the fifth house and you are heterosexual, you may enjoy being the aggressor and kind of going after some guy, asking for that person's number, calling the shots, and you're deliberately doing it because you have no qualms about putting yourself out there like that. And that isn't, I would say, like, especially for younger women these days, that's probably par for the course. It's probably the gender roles have seem to have flipped, and the men are the ones that are getting asked out. I don't know if that's true across the board, or probably not across the board. But also, if your sun sign is something like Cancer or Taurus, I'm thinking of some of the more traditional signs, you might kind of be atypical for one of those signs as a woman, because you may have a tendency to go after the man. But it's important to note that whoever has this Mars placement, they may see this as as conquest, a conquest. It may be seen as a game, like, can I get this person to go to bed with me, to, engage me like that? And is that a good thing? You know, because you might be playing with somebody else's emotions. So, and it might complicate your life. So I don't know if that rings true for anybody who has Mars in the fifth house, but definitely I would say that. Um, Let me think about others. And there could be others that it also is true for, but I'm not going to necessarily talk about that because that could get into the sexual abuse as well. So I'm going to leave this alone. Um, Let me see if there's anything else I want to say about Mars in the fifth house. Oh, yes. Now the seventh house is committed partnership. So some people, and I would say that even in 2024, when I'm recording this, that this may possibly be true for women who are interested in men, is that there is this, maybe there's this unacknowledged or buried belief that the woman feels like she has to be sexual in order to get the man to commit to her. But in the first case, it would be to love. You have to love somebody before that commitment phase, usually. It's not always going to be true, but yeah. So this is an important thing to reflect upon, is whether or not the person, and so if you have Venus in the fifth house, this might be something where this is very important for you, because Venus rules the seventh house, or rules the second house, but that's about money. In the seventh house, it's about committed partnership. And so I believe that women, even in 2024, are doing this where they will sleep. Well, they're not sleeping. They will have sex with a man early on in their encounter with him in order to seal the deal, if you will, in order to keep his interest, to make him fall in love with them and to commit to them. Again, they may not be consciously thinking this, okay, I'm going to do this. This is my 5-year plan with this relationship, and this is how it's going to go. But it could be beneath the surface. And this is one of the reasons why sometimes, women have come to me with, for personal readings where they're talking about like, wow, this person was very engaged, and then all of a sudden they're not. And they might say, hey, I can't deal with you anymore. I can't mess with you anymore because I have fallen in love with somebody and I'm going to be faithful to that person. If you are having a friends with benefits situation and someone tells you that, I'm going to say a man, because I don't think two women would have that type of dynamic. I could be wrong, but I just don't think that it's the same thing. If that would make you feel like it was a slap in the face, then or if you can imagine if that could ever happen to you, that would feel so awful to you, then that you were not really paying attention to the nature of the relationship. But I'm putting that in air quotes because the relationship was really one-dimensional and sexual. And the other person regarded it as just fun, which is, again, is a fifth house kind of a state of mind. I feel that even throughout the decades, that men have always been able to be more capable of taking it or leaving it than women. And it's probably biological, and it's probably to protect, women taking care of offspring. But this is precisely why I think that women should take this very seriously. Men should too, obviously, because everybody should take their sexual activities with other people very seriously, because there can be crossed wires of communication. And some of this can border on the delusional for some people, that they did not really know the nature of the relationship they had engaged in. So fifth house can be booty calls, I mean, I don't know. I know that's a dated kind of word, but I think it's a funny term. I don't know what the current lingo is, but yeah, so I just wanted to kind of explain about fifth house stuff. I guess even if you have the moon in the fifth house, I have the moon in the fifth house. Remember that it doesn't mean this would apply to 100% of the people, because the fifth house is creativity. So it could be somebody who has a desire to create art. So their emotions are connected to that. But it also can be somebody who is very romantic. And again, if somebody gets in their head, and usually this is going to be a woman, that this is how men are and how they respond, so you have to go along with the program, and maybe they have emotional needs that they have not really, that might be excessive actually, then they may do something hoping, with an ulterior motive. They may have sex with a man for that reason. In the eighth house, I'm just going to mention sex as kind of a soulful activity. And this is and somebody mentioned sex work as being connected to the eighth house. And I was like, what? I mean, I always think of it as serious sex, but now I get it, probably because, transactional, because of other people's money. So again, that will be delved into in a future video. I don't want to combine those because that's going to take some time as well. But let's talk about why the eighth house can be about sex at a deep level. I actually think that should be the house of conceiving children, because that's serious business. That, to me, how can the fifth house really be about all these fun activities, and then you talk about conceiving children? That's serious business. But it's probably because the fifth house is about children in general, and it's also about your inner child. So the eighth house is about intimacy, and people, of course, think about sex when the word intimacy is used. And of course, you can say that, but it's kind of a misleading term, because animals have sex. Having sex doesn't mean you're really uh, getting intimate with someone, although you are technically, even if you want to look at it from a physical point of view, but also energetically, yes. Even if it's a one night stand and you're never going to see this person again, you still could create those invisible cords that draw you to that person, and when you don't want to be connected to that person. So anyway, the eighth house, it's the house of emotional intimacy. I would say first and foremost, because this is a water house. This is Scorpio's domain. So we can also look at it as the house of shame, and because it's the house of the shadow. Again, because of the sexual abuse. I'm going to leave that for that video. But just closing my door, and nothing to see here. Yeah, so this, one of the things that when somebody has prominent Scorpio, there's a good chance that they have trust issues, and this can extend to getting intimate with someone, both emotionally and sexually. And so the ability to kind of bare one's soul or bare one's body, they are different, but they're also connected. And some people, they just can't do that. So this is deep. The seventh house that Libra rules is about committing to someone. Well, as we know, you can get married, you can commit to someone, and you may be a bigamist. You may be married to somebody else, you may be a serial cheater, you may be, deceptive, maybe you're gay and you're married to somebody of the opposite sex, and you have no real, even emotional or physical attraction to that person. You might have done it for different reasons. And so I'm just using these examples to say that you can get married and not have it mean much of anything. And yet, maybe you marry for money, you're young and you're marrying an older person for safety or stability, and it's almost like marrying a parent or something. But the eighth house is where, I was going to say, shit gets real, because you are going beneath the surface with a person. You are not just having a wedding ceremony and signing a document. The seventh house can be legal affairs. The eighth house is a water house. So it's about sometimes uncomfortable feelings. I feel that a relationship that is real is not just about the surface types of designations like the title of husband and wife and partner and things like that. Those are handy to use when you need to, but it doesn't really touch the relationship the way that the behavior itself does about getting very close. So when we talk about sex in the eighth house, it's very serious. It's very mindful. It is coming from a deeper place. If it's something, because the eighth house can be transformation, it can be something that the person is using for a higher purpose that has some kind of magical or therapeutic reasons. But with another person, this can, so like tantric yoga is what I was alluding to. But just in general, the body, mind, and soul coming together with two people. Whereas the fifth house, it can just be like, wow, that person has a great body. I'm going to get with that person because it's very pleasurable, that person. I'm, deriving that pleasure. Talking about signs and why I think that some of them are the randiest signs. So with Aries, Aries is ruled by Mars. So it's a no-brainer. Also, because of the rulership of Mars with Aries people, and by extension, this might be your Mars and Aries where this shows up for you, or even, I guess, Aries rising, if that's the way that you present yourself to others. But I'm really speaking specifically about the Sun in Aries, Mars in Aries, or even Venus in Aries. Like that is how your relationships tend to go. There's also this, Aries is a fire sign, so fire signs love freedom. So a fire sign committing is totally possible. It happens all the time. But the thing is that hopefully it's with somebody that respects that person's freedom, because um, fire signs just really need that. And so sometimes that might also um, influence you, because you might be like, it's easier to just have these short term, like, whether you want to call them one night stands or whatever, than to have a relationship, because in relationships, I feel tied down. And that's the last thing I want to feel. So it could be like commitment phobic. But there's a rash quality of Aries, so the person may just jump into things, not even think about it. And why are they jumping into things? Because they may be turned on. They may look at somebody and they think, wow, that person is really hot. And that's all it takes. So if you are an Aries person, or somebody who's an Aries person, you may see how their love life can be tumultuous, because when you pursue someone specifically for that reason, like maybe sometimes it is confusing love and desire, and sexual desire, that can be really problematic until maybe it's when the person truly matures that they can kind of cut themselves off at the pass and say, no, I'm not going to just jump into things. I'm going to get to know that person very well, because I know my nature and I tend to do this. And don't get me wrong. I mean, this person could actually believe that they're in love with someone, but they're confusing lust with love. Or is it the opposite? But whatever. They don't, they can't see the difference between those two concepts. It's almost like they're one and the same for such a person. With Leo ruling the fifth house, it could be something connected to that. I also think with Leo, there is a desire for attention. And I think this is true for a lot of Leo people, not 100%. So please don't come at me, because I know that there are Leos who are not like that. And when I talk about attention, I don't just mean like seeking it out because a person's a narcissist or anything. I'm talking about being a natural performer and being somebody who wants maybe to share their gregarious personality with others. Um, and if the person is, usually Leo people are very loyal, but I could see somebody like that even sometimes cheating because they feel neglected by the other party that they're with. Maybe that person's a workaholic, the other person, and the Leo feels, not seen, ignored. Leo wants to feel special, so that's probably where it's coming from. But, and I know these are emotional needs, but they can translate sometimes into seeking out more. I don't know, there might be a lot of charged up energy when a person is having some kind of an affair or a fling. And definitely Leo is a very romantic sign, so it might just be to get that rush of the infatuation stage, and the sexual desire goes along with it. But I do think that fire signs in general are very passionate, and that can even be on the physical level. And remember that they are masculine signs, so that's where we get that sense of the sexual influence as well. And in terms of the earth signs, it's kind of a no-brainer because earth can connect to the body. So earth signs tend already to be enamored by anything, by the pleasures of the flesh. Taurus in particular, because it is ruled by Venus, but Virgo and Capricorn, while they can be more austere and less sensual, um, the senses are always going to play a role because they are earth signs, and they just are in tune with the things of this world, including the body and the, whether you call it requirements or the way the body works. There's just this innate understanding. And I also think about it in terms of like what is natural. There might be for some earth signs this idea that this is a physical desire, and therefore it is something that should not be ignored because this is part of biology. Yeah, those Virgos can really they can really I was going to say, like, especially Virgo women, they can put on this very chaste exterior and they may be really something else in private. And I'm just going to so those are the main ones. I'm going to just say one thing about Scorpio, because Scorpio is one of those signs that they always talk about with sex. And I think that Scorpio sex probably has a big theme in their life in some way, but I would wager that a lot of that is more in the traumatic realm or problematic realm than it is something that is, an example being Mackenzie Phillips, um, who talked about having sex with her own father. That doesn't get much more of the shadow or that kind of shameful type of admission. And not to say that she should feel ashamed, but it just naturally occurs. I'm happy that she's getting so much more support than she did initially when she brought it out. So I think people are evolving about these things because, people are so quick to just say, why didn't she do this or that, and all of that. And there are reasons, even on a psychological level, that have nothing to do with what you could do in a certain situation. So anyway, I think that it's always kind of like a little bit of a sore subject with Scorpios because there might have been something that could be described as twisted or distorted with sex that soured them on it. But it doesn't mean that you cannot overcome that. I'll get to that with the next video. But just to say that Scorpio is associated with this, but it's really the collective shadow that the eighth house represents. And has that been caused by religion or by, what has been the origin of that? Well, I don't think it's any one thing, but certainly the powers that were, I don't want to say that they currently are, but I do believe that they hijacked the concept of God in order to create a mind control program that really made people feel that there was something shameful about certain, biological desires, and so they could use as a way to control people. Um, but in any case, this can also be great healing, or healers, the Scorpio or the Pluto connection, and even with sex, that can, whether the person is doing so in a professional setting or even something that they do within themselves, whatever they have been through, there can be a positive, transformative angle to this. So, yeah. And I would just say all the water signs, when we also talk about emotions, about love and the desire for love, yes, those things can get somehow misinterpreted. And a person can be seeking love and using sex to get there. So, and then not even really understanding that they're doing so. Maybe there are some people that know exactly what they're doing, but I think some people may do it just out of force of habit because that's what they think they need to do. And of all the air signs, I would say with Libra, that because Libra is ruled by Venus, again, wanting to be in a partnership and thinking that's the price of admission, that that's just what you have to do. Also being attracted to attractive people. And again, the wires can get crossed. Am I physically attracted to this person, or do I really love them? And of course you can have both. I'm just saying that sometimes these things get a bit confused. In terms of aspects, I would say that look at the Mars aspect. I mean, with the moon in conjunction with Mars, the emotions and the sex drive are activated, that can lead to very quick, your emotions get heightened, but it could be even sexual attraction, and the person moves very quickly when it comes to relationships. Anything like Mars and Pluto, that can be, or I should say, like, yeah, I'm not gonna talk too much about that. Maybe the conjunction between Mars and Pluto can be very intense as it pertains to, being seductive in some way, but I'll get into more of that in the next video. I do want to say one more thing because I don't think I mentioned uh, planetary placements in the eighth house. And one of them can be Mars in the eighth. Mars is one of the rulers of the eighth. So I have read that that can be having a high sex drive. So take of that what you will. Also, Uranus in the eighth could be somebody who's into fetishes, things that are unusual, kinks, and that, and people who have those kinds of things, they will tend, that will tend to make them more involved with sex because it's more elaborate. It's not just like, they have to set everything up. So that could indicate something with sex. And again, I'm not talking about anything that has to do with abuse in this particular video with the eighth house. Trying to think of when you have Venus there, it's more, to me, it's more about wanting a partner that you are just like is your soulmate, and it's more of the emotional intensity, but I suppose it could be, other things too, possibly. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.